What's going on, guys? My name's Theoatrix, and today I'm bringing a complete level 1 to 99 prayer guide for free to play and pay to play old school RuneScape. Now, prayer has many uses, and it is actually counted as a combat stat which can affect your combat level. While getting your prayer up does allow you to get better prayers like protection prayers and piety, rigor, augury, getting a higher prayer level will actually save you a lot of money in the long run of your account, because when you think about it, a prayer potion heals 7 prayer points plus 1/4 of your prayer level. So if you get a higher prayer level early on in the game, you're going to use far less prayer potions in the long run, and that will save you a ton of money. As a free-to-play player, you don't really have access to any good prayer training methods at all. The only way to train prayer is by burying bones or big bones, and if you were to just sit there and bury regular bones from level 1 to 99, it would take over 1,000 hours and would cost you over 200 mil. Big bones would take about 300 to 400 hours to bury to 99, but it would cost you 250 mil, which is just not worth it. The best you can do as a new free-to-play player is complete the Restless Ghost quest and leave your prayer there until you become a member. Burying bones as a free-to-play player is not a good use of your time, because the equivalent to using 1 dragon bone on a Gilded Altar is to burying 50 normal bones, so 2 inventories of burying. For players that can't afford membership or bonds, the most viable method is killing hill giants in Edgeville Dungeon and burying the big bones that you get as you kill them. Now, this can be good in the long run for combat XP and prayer XP, but to be honest, you're probably better off just banking all of the big bones and selling them, buying a bond, and doing a cheaper method. As a member in Old School RuneScape, you have access to 3 key different training methods for prayer. Firstly is the Gilded Altar, which is actually quite expensive but is very fast with no requirements. There's the Ectofuntus, which is best for Iron Men, and Ensouled Heads, which are cheap and pretty quick, but they do have some pretty high requirement. Before I talk about these methods, there's a few quests I should mention that are worth doing for the quest XP and their other rewards. So after you do Restless Ghost, you're able to do Recruitment Drive, Priest in Peril, and the Holy Grail. But keep in mind that the Holy Grail also gives you 15,000 defense XP as a reward, so if you're a pure, do not do Holy Grail. Now onto the methods. Firstly, the Gilded Altar, and using bones on a Gilded Altar with 2 burners lit gives you 3.5 times the prayer XP that you'd receive instead of burying the bone. Now you can build a Gilded Altar in your own house with burners with level 75 construction, but if you don't have this construction level, you can very easily go to world 330 to someone else's house that does have a Gilded Altar, and by no means go out of your way to get this construction level to train prayer. Honestly, you're probably better off training in other people's houses because they keep the burners lit for you. Now, as of January 24th, 2018, so the day this video was released, these are the current prices per bone to get from level 1 to 99 prayer. Now, next to the bones are their base XP rates. And why I say base XP rate is because there are a few ways which I'll show you shortly that can speed up your XP at a Gilded Altar. Now, looking at the table on the screen, Dragon Bones and Wyvern Bones are still the most viable, and I think forever will be the most viable Gilded Altar training method. They're both really fast XP per hour and quite cheap in comparison to the ones that give you more XP per hour. If you're not willing to spend at least 120 mil on prayer, I would advise not using this method because Reanimation of Ensouled Heads provides very good XP rates in comparison to these and is way cheaper. Onto the method for the Gilded Altar. The best place to train is at the Remington portal. You'll need to bring noted bones and coins to world 330, find a house, and then you can approximately use about 1,000 bones on a Gilded Altar per hour doing the base training method, depending how focused you are. But there is another method of using the bones on the altar. As soon as one of them is consumed, if you use another one on the altar, you can actually get way more XP per hour because it uses 2 bones in almost the space that you'd use 1. Obviously, this is going to be a lot more click intensive, but it does actually give a huge boost in XP rates. Moving on to the next method, which is mainly directed for Iron Men, and that is the Ectofuntus. The Ectofuntus actually gives more XP than the Gilded Altar per bone. It gives 4 times the XP of burying the bone instead of 3.5. So it is pretty cost effective, but the XP rates are nowhere near as good as a Gilded Altar. Anyway, to use the Ectofuntus, you'll need a Ghost Speak amulet from the Restless Ghost, and it's highly recommended to do Ghosts Ahoy for the Ectofile, which teleports you unlimited times to the Ectofuntus. I'm going to show you guys the method that I used when I trained on my hardcore Iron Man. Basically, you'll need a lot of bones, you'll need the Ectofile from Ghosts Ahoy, the Ghost Speak amulet, and about 20 empty pots to be safe. The first step is to buy buckets of slime from the charter crew member at Port Phasmatis and keep hopping world until you have enough to cover the amount of bones that you have. The second step, crush a heap of bones, 13 per inventory, with a slot for your Ectofile as well. And what I did is I banked using Rings of Dueling to Castle Wars and then teleporting back using the Ectofile. You can crush the bones upstairs in the Ectofuntus. Now the final step is to use your Ectofile, Ghost Speak amulet, buckets of slime and crush bones, teleport to the Ectofuntus and worship the middle fountain. Bank the same as before using the Rings of Dueling, or you can actually use the Ecto tokens that you get from this step to walk to Port Phasmatis Bank and keep banking there. Now the XP rates, as I said at the Ectofuntus, are almost a third of the speed compared to a Gilded Altar, so this method is only really recommended for Iron Men that don't have access to an altar yet. Now the final method is reanimation of ensouled heads. In order to be able to do this method, you need to have at least level 3 magic, but you do need a way higher magic level if you want to do more training methods. Level 3 only gives you access to ensouled goblin heads. You also need 60% Arceus House Favor in the Zaya area, and that gives you access to the Arceus spellbook, which you need to do this method. And you'll also want to have decent combat stats, maybe 60 in all of them at least, to kill the reanimated monsters. Now the items you'll need to be able to reanimate are ensouled heads. I'll talk about the prices and which one to pick shortly. You'll need the runes to cast the reanimation spells, which you can check on the Arceus spellbook, a Draymond or Lunar Staff to use Fairy Rings, and you'll also need to have started Fairy Tail Part 2 to be able to do this really effectively. Rune Pouch to hold the runes that you use to cast the spell, and of course combat gear and food if you're a low level. Now when you cast Reanimate on an ensouled head, you have to be near the Dark Altar, and there's a few ways you can get to the Dark Altar. It's almost required to have started Fairy Tail Part 2 for the Fairy Rings because there isn't really a faster way to get there. Now the Fairy Ring located near the Dark Altar has the code CIS, and you have to pay 80,000 GP at the NPC around it to revive the Fairy Ring before you can even use it. So if you haven't used it before, you do have to walk there once, pay that 80k, and then you can use it whenever you want. Now to speed up your trips, there are 3 ways that I recommend to get to Fairy Rings in between banking, and by the way, you can bank wherever you want. I'd probably recommend banking at Castle Wars with a Ring of Dueling. These 3 teleports, the Slayer Ring teleport to the Relicus Slayer dungeon takes you really close to a fairy ring, so does the Legends Guild Quest Cape teleport, and lastly, an Amulet of Glory Edgeville teleport is sort of close to a fairy ring for those that don't have any of those other items. Now the cost of ensouled heads is way less than bones, and the XP rates for ensouled heads are pretty fast, but obviously not quite as fast as bones can be. Regardless, the costs I'm showing on screen right now includes the runes cost that you need to cast the reanimation spell, and also it's assuming that you go on a fresh account from 1 prayer all the way to 99. Obviously, there are requirements, and a person with level 1 prayer probably can't do reanimation, but I'm going to show level 1 to 99 so the XP required stays the same and you guys can compare the costs. You can reanimate about 150 to 170 per hour at lower combat levels, but with higher combat levels, you can get above 200 to about 220. The XP rates on the screen are assuming that you can do about 185 heads per hour, so in the middle of that. Also, I'm not showing all of the heads, I'm only showing the ones that you can actually buy and get a decent supply of, because a lot of these ensouled heads don't really sell on the Grand Exchange and would be really hard to get a lot of. On the left hand side, you can see that I've put the magic level required. Obviously 93 magic is a little bit steep, but for those that do have it, 90 mil from level 1 to 99 prayer with an XP rate of 290k on average per hour is very, very good and very cheap for prayer. Another cheaper and pretty good alternative is the Calphite head that I've listed there. It only costs about 48 mil to get to 99 and will get you about 165k XP per hour. Well, that's pretty much all of the methods I wanted to show in my 1 to 99 prayer guide. It's really up to you which method you pick. Personally, on a fresh account, I'd probably use the Gilded Altar and get to 43 prayer, train the account up, and then once you have the requirements, get started on the Reanimation. Now, of course, the prices I've shown in this video are going to change day to day, so I've put some links to some calculators in the description below that you can click and work out how much it will cost to get to that level, depending on the method. Anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching this guide. If you did enjoy it and learned something, be sure to leave a like, and as always, thanks so much for watching, and have a nice day.